December 1776. The dream of American liberty is dying. It dies in the frozen mud of retreat, in the whispers of desertion, in the hollow eyes of starving soldiers. General George Washington's Continental Army, a ragged collection of ghosts, has been hunted across New Jersey by the most powerful military machine on earth. Defeat is no longer a possibility, it is a certainty, waiting for the ice on the Delaware River to thicken enough for the British to cross and deliver the final blow. Hope is a frozen ember, one breath away from being extinguished forever. But in the darkest hours, history is not made by armies alone. It is shaped by whispers, by secrets, by the quiet courage of individuals whose names are lost to the wind. Our story is about one such man, Elias Thorne. A former surveyor from Pennsylvania, he knew the land, its creeks, and its secrets. But now, his surveying tools gathered dust. His war was one of shadows. He was an agent, a spy, and his final, desperate mission was the only thing standing between Washington's army and annihilation. His objective, slip into the occupied town of Trenton, confirm the disposition of the Hessian garrison stationed there, and ensure no word of Washington's audacious, impossible plan had leaked. The plan was madness. To cross a treacherous, ice-choked river in the dead of a winter's night with 2,400 men and attack a professional army. Failure would not just be a defeat, it would be the end of the revolution. Elias pulled his woolen collar tighter, the biting wind a constant reminder of the stakes. The fate of a nation rested on what he could see and, more importantly, what he could keep hidden. Trenton was a town drunk on arrogance and Christmas cheer. Hessian soldiers, the feared German mercenaries hired by the British, swaggered through the streets. Their commander, Colonel Johann Rall, held the American rebels in contempt, reportedly saying, "Let them come. We will at them with the bayonet." Inside the cozy, firelit taverns, laughter and song spilled into the frigid air, a stark contrast to the misery of the American camp just a few miles away. Elias moved like a wraith through the back alleys, his face obscured by shadow, his heart a cold knot of dread and determination. His contact was a blacksmith's wife, a woman whose quiet patriotism burned brighter than her husband's forge. Under the guise of inquiring about a mended tool, Elias received the critical intelligence. Colonel Rall, overconfident and dismissive of warnings from loyalist spies, had neglected to fortify the town's outer roads. Patrols were infrequent, discipline was lax, and the Hessians planned to feast and drink their way through the Christmas holiday. They were a formidable force, but they were blind, cocooned in their own perceived superiority. This was the vulnerability Washington needed. As Elias slipped away, a close call. A pair of Hessian grenadiers, their speech thick with German and schnapps, rounded a corner. Elias pressed himself into a darkened doorway, holding his breath, the coarse brick scraping his cheek. They passed without a glance, their minds on warmth and drink, not on the shadows that watched them. Every beat of his heart was a drum counting down the hours until the planned crossing. The intelligence was good. Now, he just had to make it back alive. The return journey was a nightmare of biting wind and slick, frozen earth. When he finally reached the American encampment at McConkey's Ferry, the scene was one of profound despair. These were not soldiers, they were phantoms. Men huddled together for warmth, their feet wrapped in rags, some leaving bloody tracks in the snow. The smell of wood smoke and sickness hung heavy in the air. This was the army that was meant to cross a river and face down Europe's finest? The absurdity of it was staggering. Elias was rushed to a command tent. Inside, the flickering lamplight cast long shadows on the faces of Washington's officers. He delivered his report, his voice hoarse but clear. Trenton was complacent. The northern roads were undefended. The opportunity was real. He saw relief on some faces, but doubt lingered in the eyes of others. Then he saw him. General George Washington. He was taller than Elias imagined, with a quiet intensity that seemed to suck the very air from the tent. There was no doubt in his eyes, only a chilling, unbreakable resolve. Washington listened, nodded once, and said in a low voice, "Victory or death." The words were not a boast. They were a promise. As night fell, a new enemy arrived, the weather. A fierce nor'easter blew in, bringing freezing rain, then sleet, then snow. The storm was a curse, making the mission infinitely harder. But it was also a blessing, providing a cloak of darkness and noise that would cover their movements. The order was given. The crossing would begin. Men began marching in eerie silence toward the riverbank, their meager equipment rattling softly. Elias stood by the water's edge, watching the first of the heavy, black Durham boats being pushed into the churning water, a vessel of fate on a river of ice. The Delaware was a monster. Great sheets of ice, sharp as glass, floated on the current, threatening to tear through the wooden hulls of the boats. The mission fell to Colonel John Glover's Marbleheaders, rugged fishermen from Massachusetts who were the only men on the continent skilled enough for this task. With poles and muffled oars, they fought the river. Men, horses, and heavy cannons were painstakingly loaded onto the flat-bottomed boats. It was a slow, agonizing process. Elias found himself on a boat with a dozen other men and a heavy field cannon, his mission now shifting from spy to soldier, his hands raw from pushing ice floes away with a long pike. In the center of the chaos was Washington, a statue of defiance against the storm. He had crossed early and now stood on the hostile New Jersey shore, a beacon for his men. He watched every boat, his presence a silent insistence. We will do this. For hours, the struggle continued. Men slipped on the icy decks. The sleet soaked them to the bone, their muskets and powder at constant risk of being ruined. The river groaned. The wind howled. And through it all, the boats kept coming, each one a small victory against the impossible, a testament to sheer, bloody-minded will. They were 3 hours behind schedule. The sun would be up before they could launch their surprise attack. Some officers urged Washington to turn back, to admit defeat. But there was no turning back. The army was now on the enemy's side of the river. To retreat was to be trapped and slaughtered. Washington, his face grim in the pre-dawn gloom, gave the order to march. The 9-mile trek to Trenton began. The storm was at its peak. The men, exhausted and frozen from the crossing, now had to force themselves onward through deepening snow and hail, their resolve the only thing keeping them upright. Elias marched with them, his role as an agent complete, now just one more shadow in a column of ghosts. He saw the bloody footprints some men left in the snow and understood the meaning of Washington's words. This was it, victory or death. As they neared the outskirts of Trenton, a strange quiet fell. The storm began to subside, and the town lay sleeping, completely unaware of the fate marching toward it. The intelligence had held. The risk had paid off. The ember of hope, which had been so close to dying, was now, against all odds, about to be fanned into a flame. The crossing of the Delaware was more than a maneuver. It was a resurrection. It was the moment the American Revolution, in the very idea of America, refused to die. The battle that followed would be a stunning victory, but the true triumph happened here, on this river, in this storm, powered by the will of men like Elias Thorne, the forgotten echoes of a revolution whose call for liberty still rings to this day.